नमस्कार, शुभ दिन और सभी का स्वागत है। Good evening, welcome everybody. Today we have some very interesting effervescent person who is all over the place, who has a wonderful public image and she is a celebrity now. But behind the celebration and behind the celebrity lies a whole story. If you look at this book, everybody has of course seen this book somewhere or the other. The Hindu in Oxford is a story of a small town girl who went on ambitiously to Harvard and faced the worst kind of racial discrimination and Hinduphobia, etc. Rashmi Samant needs no introduction, but just an introduction, I would say she comes from a small town, wonderful town called Udupi. I've gone there. It's famous for its Krishna Matham and also many other mathams and mandirs. It has beautiful beaches. It has got wonderful greenery. It is a very spiritual place, and also it's an area where you have a lot of banks coming. Though it's a small town, if you look at Mangalore, Manipal belt, there are so many banks that are born there. There is Syndicate Bank, 1925. There is Corporation Bank, Karnataka Bank, Canara Bank, and Vijaya Bank, which came from there and went on to shift to Bangalore. We have wonderful Manipal Institute from where she actually graduated, and it's a place where finance and also Udupi is a place which is actually the place which got us the real fast food, the Indian fast food to say the least. Idlis, vadas, dosas coming in a jiffy in 5 minutes. All that is Udupi. And from that comes a girl who had the courage, the guts, and drive to rise from there and reach Oxford with every possible colors, wonderful colors attached to her spurs with a lot of credits and way to reach there is not easy, but she reached there and then starts a story. So, Rashmi, you have described your town and your areas in a very evocative manner in the book. So, would you like to say a few words about our Janmabhoomi?
Well, Ratanji, firstly, I think Udupi is also known as the temple town of Bharat.
Yes.
Growing up there, it was literally, हर 500 मीटर में एक मंदिर मिलता था. Every 500 meters, you see a temple. And these temples have had 1,000-year-old, or, even longer than that, unbroken tradition of just, free food and altruism, that is the so-called famous altruism now, and so much seva paropakara and the true essence of Sanatan Dharma, really. So that was a kind of upbringing that I've had, and I think I truly feel blessed to have had that kind of an upbringing. I think very often we take small towns as a misnomer for छोटे सपने, small dreams and for
True.
achievement on a small scale. But I think that's a misnomer. I think small towns, you can clearly see the skies at night. You can see the stars. So that's how high we dream, and I think that was truly, the aspirational bent for me right from the beginning. That sense of reckless optimism that anything is possible, and that whatever I set my mind to, that we can, someone from a small town can very well do it. So that's been the kind of journey that I've had.
Yeah, I think small towns are much more peaceful, much more enjoyable. You enjoy life much better. You have some time with yourself and you are not tied down with so many other issues, just like traveling from one end to the other end. That itself is a blessing. And of course, pollution-free air and people who know each other very well. So from there, the you ended up in UK and in Oxford. And
Yeah.
first, it struck me was the talk you talk about it on page 73 onwards about Rhodes and Christopher Codrington, right? So they are the people who founded Oxford. So people uninitiated in the colonial past and about the education, the huge universities that you see, they have some what you call blood behind, blood money under it. So could you just elaborate why you raised that issue of Rhodes and Christopher?
Well, Cecil Rhodes and Christopher Codrington are one of the most kind of celebrated and preserved alumni of the university. Even today, if you go to the libraries, I think they've recently just removed it, but the central part of the library used to have a statue of Christopher Codrington in All Souls Library. And if you walk by the famous Oriel Street, you can see a huge towering statue of Cecil Rhodes. But if you look into the pages of history, these are people who have actively persecuted indigenous people, who have been, generals of and flag bearers of colonization, who have inadvertently caused so much misery and inhuman conditions for indigenous people. Be it in Africa, the so-called Rhodesia, which Cecil Rhodes made, or other parts where Christopher Codrington had his reign. And it feels like these people accumulated all of the wealth all their lives. They come to Oxford, they come back to their alma mater, and they donate a huge chunk of it, which then gets actively used to whitewash and preserve a false legacy, which celebrates their deeds somehow. In fact, I was surprised that in Oxford, people still used to say that, oh, wasn't colonization a positive experience for indigenous people? It
You talk
civilized
about,
you.
yeah.
They somehow want to bring in this whole narrative that we were perhaps living in jungles and didn't know how to speak before colonization came along, and that the British were a good thing that happened, not the other not the other way
May I
around.
add, may I add something?
Yes.
You picked up, did you know about the background of Oxford, or it was something that you learned when you reached there?
Unfortunately, it is something that I learned when I reached there. I think the Macaulay
Okay.
education system is so efficient, something I'm a product of here in Bharat, in keeping all these facts away from the indigenous people, that Bharat also forms that kind of a background, Africa. And a lot of the world, we are just kept from our true history, and it is these vanquishers, these victors, who have unfortunately written a very biased narrative. It's only once I got there, and I was very curious about who these icons on campus were. And inadvertently, I took a tour called the क्या कहते हैं, uncomfortable Oxford tour, which was organized by the so-called troublemakers of Oxford. So we had a small section which were branded troublemakers. I think that's the way, right, Ratanji? When someone speaks the truth and toes a line which is uncomfortable for the supremacists, they brand them and they try to disenfranchise their credibility. I think we see that here in Bharat as well. The nationalist people are called communal, hate mongers, etc., etc., just to discredit the truth, because truth is very, very painful for them to hear. So it was this so-called, troublemakers of Oxford, who have come up with this ingenious and brilliant tool called Uncomfortable Oxford. And it is a tour which happens in the first few weeks of college. And I somehow got enrolled onto that. Some, friends signed me up for
So,
that. And then I ended
so
up.
20, yeah, so a 22-year girl with stars in her eyes reaches UK to conquer the world, then ends up standing for the president of Oxford University Students' Union. There must be something in your mind that
Yeah.
I think you were always a leader in your school days also, right? And having decided, you were a school
Yes.
leader, right, in the school days also? Right. So you have the leadership streak in
Yes.
you, Now, right?
So for me, I think, a class leader since I was in kindergarten. So I was in kindergarten, I think UKG. I was class leader. Since then, I've been a class leader. Undergraduate days, I was
But didn't you
also
feel,
the
didn't you
student
feel,
leader.
didn't you feel it was over ambitious? Didn't you feel it was over ambitious on your part? Straightaway stand for Oxford University Student Union presidentship because there was no other Indian who became president there and you were junior, right? Compared to
Yeah,
other compatriots were junior.
yeah, I was. But I think for me, I think injustice is a very strong motivator. Every time I see something, wrong in society or something going bad, I just had this urge to stand up and say, okay, don't do this, don't do that. That's been a very constant theme for me since childhood. Maybe a manufacturing default, that I need to like speak up and I can't just sit down and stomach injustice. So for me, uh, watching all of this colonial construct, seeing my people being vilified through academia, through popular culture, which then follows, because Oxford really sets the tone for narratives globally, it was hard to stomach. So then, when I was looking around, okay, what can I do? What can I participate in? The presidential election forms opened up, and I thought, might as well run, and run a campaign of decolonization. If I don't win, it'll just end up, at least creating that, what do you say, sort of consciousness among people that, okay, this is also one side of the story. So it was just this harmless thing that I had, that, okay, we're going to go and create some, ruffle some feathers, and, going to start a parallel kind of a thing. It was just like
Now tell
looking for a,
me, okay, now tell
yeah.
me this idea of such a heavy duty, theme, decolonization pitch of your campaign. Don't tell me honestly it was on your own. There was somebody who prompted you.
No, not really. I think it was mostly my own, and it was something I saw, because you can see that normally presidential elections, they pick up themes from what leaders before have promised. So no one's really original. They just try to tweak manifestos from the past. So if there's a
No,
someone's
but still, for a 22-year girl from a small place in India, you go there and you end up bringing such a heavy-duty topic like decolonization. Then you go on to speak very boldly, that too during COVID time, and you have your lectures being tapped and you being in fact followed for what you're saying and what you're writing. So, didn't you think it was too much of it, and you didn't ask anybody whether you're doing the right thing? There was nobody to guide you.
Ratanji, I think when you're young, you're recklessly optimistic. And that unfortunately gives you a lot of, what do you say, strength and power. And I don't know, it gives you this bravado. I mean, sometimes even foolish bravado. But I think, it's youth. And I think it was just in that youthfulness of. Mine, that I just went about it. And I think I was also naive. Ratanji, I'll admit, I'll be very honest. I think I was very naive. I still saw the world as black and white, and I thought that everything is perhaps it's either right or wrong. You say the truth, people will listen to you. You can wake people up. I was oblivious to the fact of society having a kind of people who are pretending to be asleep. I just didn't know about that aspect of society, that people deliberately pretend like they don't know things, or that they kind of have an issue, what do you say, in doing things. So I think that was also a bit of a issue for me, because I was very naive. I saw that, I thought that, okay, if I speak the truth, they're going to inadvertently listen. So that was the whole
Well,
idea.
I should know because I was thrown out of the college when I led the anti-emergency, programs. And 2 years later, the principal called me when I went there for my library studies because in Xavier's, and I stayed that my old college was near my home. So I went there to ask for library card. And then principal called me, gave me a long lecture why he threw me out, and then he gave me the library card. So I know how you can be very idealistic and how you think that you can take on the world. So I think it is a good thing. And then suddenly you find institutional biases. You end up in a woke
Hmm.
hothouse where every people are woke. You talk about problem with the institutions, where the university itself, the student union team, the faculty, the media, and the censorship, and also the cancel
Hmm.
culture suddenly is thrown up, and you find yourself in the wilderness, and you find suddenly facing so many demons or so many people, animosity with so many people. So what was the experience like, and how did you try to cope with that particular experience? Before I get into your later part, just this very moment when all this suddenly dropped out of nowhere. So how did you? I lost her. People, please wait. I think she'll reconnect. So I was asking her that how the bias was. If you see her, some of the parts of the books where she talks about it, where she joins in. Yeah, sorry, we lost you.
Sorry
Okay.
about that. Yeah.
So just like those people dropped onto you, you dropped out of the program.
Yes.
So at that very moment when so many people is out, so many enemies suddenly, and you coped with it, so you still stood up and you still fought. So that strength and the way you fought, you could just describe for people.
Well, Ratanji, initially I didn't know what was going on because I think what we lack, if I may put it in Hindi, is Shatrubodh. We are not programmed to even think of society in bad light, to think of people as having ill intentions. So if someone's accusing you of something, you often think, okay, maybe they really feel something about it, and I was, in this particular position where I was being called racist, I was being called Islamophobic, I was being called transphobic, anti Semitic, all the accusations under the sun. I was even being charged with corruption. People were like, oh, you're corrupt. You took money from Modi ji to win this election. I mean, it's a student election and, it was COVID election. There was not even a matter of, spending a single penny, but, all these accusations kind of started racking up.
You
Initially, I
told
really thought,
you tell in the
hmm,
book, you tell in the book you didn't even print posters, right?
yeah, I didn't even do that. Yeah, I just, yeah, it was a moment that just caught on fire. And it was like for me, I didn't know what was going on really. Initially, I thought the students have misunderstood me. They have some kind of a genuine problem. So I need to address it. So I used to write these open letters saying, okay, these accusations are false. These are the charges, and this is how they're false, blah, blah, blah. And then my letter and me speaking would enrage them further. In fact, I think I've included a letter in the book where it says she has caused offense and she has offended a lot of people, and it is not up to her to justify it. As in, as if the right to put on accusations, as if the right to persecute someone is one way, and that the victim has no the person you're pointing fingers at has lost their ability to even respond. Like, you're not even allowed to respond. Even responding is taken as a as a word of intolerance, that you're just responding and defending yourself. That makes you a bigot. You're not allowed to even
In
talk. You
fact,
should open
one of
your mouth.
yeah,
When you're accused, all you need to do is accept the accusation, shrink back, apologize, apologize, apologize. You're not even allowed to defend yourself. That's how cancel culture works. I mean, even in the court of law, even the worst of terrorists are allowed to defend themselves, say their side of things. And here, I'm being accused. It was literally an ad hominem attack. I've brought in posts of every accusation
yeah,
against me. It is
yes.
baseless. There's no legal basis. There is even no social basis. Even a person with the most minimum of IQ reads it, will be like, what is intolerant in this? This is just her travel photos, and the captions are very respectful. But I think the Chinese have this whole saying: when you want to really persecute someone, you will find the reason. And that's what they did. That's literally what they did. They simply found and made up reasons, and when they couldn't find reasons, they just made up things in thin air to vilify me,
Yeah,
stereotype me, get rid of me.
yeah, and Rashmi, you may be aware that actually the woke culture or woke principle is that an oppressor or enemy has no right to respond, no right to defend herself or himself. That's a basic principle. It's an accepted principle. See, after the massive win, you thought, now things will cool down. Suddenly, the wolf pack attacks you from every side, right? So you have uh, all kind of people coming onto you, right from a respectable history professor called Abhijit Sarkar. I'm deliberately naming him because for an academician to behave in such a horrible manner is something that must be brought out, and he brought out very bravely. And this strange combination of extreme left woke and the one side and vice racist bigots on the other side, it's a unique combination for you, and you faced all of them. So that tells me that what kind of fight it was. And this is not the only thing that you face. You have quoted a case of 2020 when Brandeis University, a Hindu Indian, was vilified and not allowed to stand for election. I think then we have case of Karan Kataria, who won in LSC and he was also not allowed to stand or disqualified. So there is a typical, very hardcore Hinduphobia which is still not accepted. If you type Islamo, you get phobia immediately on any social media. You type Hindu phobia, it doesn't come on even today. So, having seen this, what kind of fight you put up, or
Well,
you suddenly you lost, your will to fight, or you fought for some time before you said, okay, enough is enough.
Well, Ratanji, initially I, was attacked from all sides. I was miles away from home, and completely alone in a different country. So, and I had death threats. It was just not trolling and bullying and vilifying. I had death threats. People knew where I lived. My address was being doxed online. So I had to resign. Like, I was cornered to a place where if I had to live, I had to resign. So I did resign from something I'd worked my way into, something I'd honestly won with a huge mandate. But then I didn't want to give up. I don't think I could live with the conscience, with the trauma of having let go of something like this, having always been raised and, having always been lived a path of standing up for others, standing up for what's right. I don't think I could live if I couldn't stand up for myself. So I filed a complaint with the police. I filed a formal complaint within the university, and the investigation happened and the investigation report came out. It was proved that I didn't do anything wrong. The professor responsible was actually removed from his position, and he no longer is part of the ecosystem anymore. And there were lots of new rules and regulations brought into code of conduct of faculty so that such incidents will be prevented in the future, really. So I'm happy that we were able to fight back and we were able to really re-establish and prove what happened. Unfortunately, the media is so biased that they still do not cover aspects of
There
victory.
is
They
one
don't ask.
point. There is one point you missed out, which I really, would like to underline. That is, once you got the judgment in your favor, it was you were asked to keep it private. So
Private,
you have a
yes,
sentence where you say humiliation is public, but vindication is private. That's very
yes.
wonderful and very painful statement to make actually. So how could you stand to that kind of injustice where you are vilified publicly, then the university delayed the judgment as long as possible, and then told to keep it confidential. So how
Well,
did you cope with it?
it's extremely painful, Ratanji. When the entire incident was going on, the university was completely mum. They did not give out any official statements to the public. They, were in consistent contact with me, but I had to keep all of the communication private and confidential because they imposed a one-way confidentiality on me. I hadn't signed any confidentiality agreement, but they had imposed a one-way confidentiality, and they expected me to keep it if I wanted to graduate. And they allowed the public to have its perception. When there are three student clubs which are not even registered with the university, Oxford Hindu Society, South Asian Society, and India Society, they're not even registered. We can also claim to be the HinduPost Society of Oxford. And these three societies actually gave out a statement, and it was touted around on campus as the official statement of the Oxford University. And they
Yeah.
even allowed that to run. They did not even clarify that it was not their official statement, and it was just random student clubs not even affiliated to the university making these statements. So they allowed, I think the crime is deeper than just this. They
You,
allowed for me
I,
to be
yeah,
consistently vilified. They
what,
allowed
what
the attacks on me when they could have
What
clearly
rankled me
stopped
was,
it.
yeah, there is a organization you have called ECRI or something, which was supposed to
Cray,
stand for the
cray.
colored
Yeah, yeah,
people,
yeah. Yeah.
Gray. So that was one of the things that really was rankled me, that the organization which is supposed to look after the colored people or the injustice on the other
Yeah.
races ends up opposing you from the day one. So what could be the
Exactly.
cause?
So
What is the
Cray is
mindset of these people?
Cray is a campaign for racial justice and equality at Oxford, and it is a registered campaign. And they have opposed my campaign since day one, as I have shown in the book.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, diversity and inclusion is allowed in the West only as long as it is symbolic. So as long as you say that, see, we are all colored people, we are smiling for this photo. Look, we bring diversity to the table. Look, we are doing what do you say? Diversity weeks. They would be happy if I was that kind of a president who, in the name of decolonization, would host decolonization week, put flags of 100 odd countries on campus, distribute food from multicultural food, multi cuisine, bring people from across the world to dance on campus, and then leave it at it. They would be
So
happy if decolonization was that. But my
cosmetics.
decolonization was it was a policy suggestion to start a review of the syllabus and to change it in the next 3 years. So I was attacking the root cause of the problem. They are happy to allow decolonization and conversations and racial equality and organizations which promote racial equality, as long as it is hogwash, as long as it's keeping the society from addressing the real issues, as long as it's just cosmetic, as long as it is just symbolic. But the minute it becomes serious, the minute it's that you're trying to make the problem go away, that's when they have a problem. And unfortunately, these organizations are led by people who sometimes are people of color, but they clearly know what line to toe so that their masters keep them in power. It is very unfortunate they do not have their own independent critical thinking, and that that despite being people of color, they choose to become sepoys to these unfavorable crusades day in and day out.
Yeah, see, I also read about the victim shaming of the rape cases which happened in the university and how they tried to cover it up, and even you were victim shamed. So this kind of approach, which led to a huge mental problem for you, talk of post-traumatic stress disorder, you talk about sleep paralysis, which was very shocking. And that leads me to the question that is just asked by a lady called Maitri. How is academic Hinduphobia and impacting Hindu students who seek admission in these foreign institutes? So,
Well, I
what could you
think,
add to
Ratan,
that?
we don't hear these stories because this is kept away from the mainstream. In Bharat, there is this whole mentality that Western education is supreme and kids are encouraged to go abroad. Sometimes kids even, take massive loans to do so. Once they go there, they realize that, there is discrimination, that there is unfair treatment, and their Hindu identity is one of the easiest targets, especially kids with kalava on their hands. They are bullied, they are made fun of. If they have a tika, they are made fun of. Even in workplaces abroad, they are made fun of, and they said, hey, you are into prejudice, post this thing, you're not civilized, and so on and so forth. These kids unfortunately retreat into their shells because they have so much, they have big loans, they have families to look after. So they kind of what do you say, suffer this trauma on their own, and they just march on. Because I think the Bharatiya people, we've never taken discrimination as an excuse not to excel. We know many communities which, on the basis that they're discriminated, seek unfair what do you say, compensation from society. They seek reservation, they seek all kinds of special treatment across the world. But the Hindu community never does that. We never take discrimination as as an excuse not to excel. So we just keep marching on, and we suppress the trauma. I think as a community, I've also written somewhere in the pages that even experiencing trauma is a privilege. To even say that I was discriminated against, that is a privilege which is uh, secured for a select few. So unfortunately, and also because there is no mainstream reporting of how these students suffer, they sometimes feel like it's only them that are going through these things, and they refuse to come out in public because they feel that it will further put them in this corner. It will further push them into a corner and further cause discrimination against them. Unfortunately, they suffer alone. They never take it as an excuse not to excel. They excel despite that, they come out despite that, and they suffer a lot and they survive, for that matter. And I think that's the beauty of our community, right? We survive irrespective of everything.
True. See, one line before I go to the last section. Very profound statement for a young girl to make such a profound statement really impresses me. after the decision was made, you're right, but ultimately, there is no justice in this world unless you make it for yourself. It helps to have truth on your side, but you have to be willing to put into the rest of the work. And it's a very profound statement. And I think this is very assertive statement also, where you said the truth and the justice has to be fought for. You don't get it on a platter. And even if you get justice, you have to see to it that is actually implemented in your favor. And that is where you come out a winner. So you want to add to that?
Well, Ratanji, yes, I've just noticed that, the world is not a fair place, really. There's so much institutional bias. The gray is, it's more black than gray out there. And, we really, really need to make our own fight. There is nobody out there who's going to support our case just because we have truth on our side or something bad has happened to us. We need to go out and make it. And when we make it, we will always be treated as the perpetrators. The investigation was massively delayed. I was still studying for my course, which is considered one of the toughest courses of all time. Imagine having to manage a police investigation, having to manage an internal university investigation, which is all being delayed like anything. Imagine having to study through all of this. I graduated with merit despite all of these conditions, and having to manage all of this. And sometimes you may feel that, why did it happen to me? Why is this so unfair? Why is the world unfair? But unfortunately, that is how it is, and there is no justice until we make it. And even after making it, the battle is not won. There is always the battle of narratives that is to be fought. See, I have a university internal investigation which has given me a clean sheet. There is a motion in the British Parliament which supports me. There is a debate in the Bharatiya Rajya Sabha which supports me. But even today, if you Google my name, the top articles which come up are defamatory. They say Rashmi Samant was kicked out. They don't establish the fact that I graduated with merit. They say that, oh, racist, transphobic, anti-Semitic. They do not establish the fact that these allegations were unfounded and that they were just ad hominem attacks. The stories are going to continue to spin irrespective of having truth established through a proper channel on your side. It's equivalent to the Godra situation. They're going to continue to defame Modi ji, even if the Supreme Court has clearly given a factual judgment on the matter, saying that he was not involved in any way. That is the unfortunate times we live in. I've had to write this book, irrespective of having truth and, irrespective of having a judgment on my side. I'm going to have to even push this book, because the minute the book was announced, it was not even released, it was just announced. For 15 days, we did a campaign of announcement. People came out calling it fiction. How can you call something fiction when you haven't read what is written inside the book? So that is how steep the battle is. Even today, doing these shows and trying to push the book even further is an uphill battle. And even tomorrow, people are going to come out and say and pretend like it didn't happen, just because the bias is benefiting them somehow, and that propaganda leads to some unfair ends and means. It is a consistent uphill battle, and the other side really, really gets it. They're consistent, they're vicious, and they're at it. And it's something that we are going to have to also do if we have to really establish the truth in the long run. And that is unfortunate.
Incidentally, the wonderful cover designed by Odd Monk, he's there in the
Yes.
program, so he's saying namaste to you.
Namaste, namaste, Oddmong Bhaiya, and thank you so much for designing the
Wonderful
cover.
cover. Yeah.
Absolute hit. And even in the airports, people just pick up the book because of the beauty of the cover that Oddmong Bhaiya actually put together.
And to come at the last part, you talk about your post-trauma stress disorder. You talk about sleep paralysis, very, very frightening. And you talk about dharma, which actually cured you, not really doctors, but chanting of mantra, reading Bhagavad Gita cured you. I think it's very, very positive thing to talk about. And I think the importance of our scriptures, which actually pacify our mind, which give you wisdom to fight all these odds and come out a victorious person. This is, I think, something that must be talked about much more than what is written in a book, because there are so many examples, and yours is very, very important example, but because you suffered the worst kind of possibility of mental disorder, of paralysis, So you can explain it how finally you found peace with your scriptures.
Well, Ratanji, sleep paralysis is one condition. It's a psychological condition that leads to a physical disorder, which does not have a cure. And all people suggest is some kind of counseling to reduce the symptoms and to reduce the attacks and all of that. But I'm completely cured for the past 3-4 years. It was just the 1 year that I had it, and it's it's wonderful that the Hindu philosophy is so profound that it can bring people back from the brink of death. I think the power of mental strength and fortitude is something that we unsee. People with strong will have, in past, historically, uh, survived things miraculously. Even doctors speak of miracles. And I think there's so much strength in this philosophy that is consistently suppressed, that is consistently kept from the mainstream, that is consistently kept from its youth. They just vilify the whole philosophy with a few markers and then try to keep it from the people. And I think that's very unfortunate. It is so strong that I've seen it, really, really change my life. And I wrote about it because I hope that others, realize this and tap into something so beautiful that can completely cure them of certain things which are considered uncurable in the world today.
There is a question that whether Kindle version is available of a particular book, your
It's
book.
not, unfortunately, because we want to stop piracy. The minute we put it on Kindle, there's so much piracy that goes around. So it's just a hard copy, and we're shipping globally right now. So it's available Amazon globally. It's available on the Garuda website, and if you ping them, email them, they will ship it to you anywhere. Even Amazon, it's available globally.
So on a positive note, that dharma finally put you back to health and give you a fighting spirit, where you have become a crusader for the rights of the Hindus and rights of the oppressed indigenous people. More power to you and more success to you. Thank you so much, Rashmi, for being us. Thank
Dhanyawad,
you.
Ratanji, and thank you so much for your time and patience.
Thank you. So we meet again. Thank you.